Hello everybody and welcome to my video today. Welcome to Project Life Thursday. This is my second post. So don't mind my light right there. I just have it pointed on my albums here because I want to start this video out by sharing this setup that I have. So you can see here in my studio, I have this back wall that has these acrylic units. I have the one that is 4x4, and then on top of it, I have a 2x4. So I just have those stacked on each other. I have really high ceilings in this room. It was our garage before it was my studio. So I have the space to do that. And my vision was always to have a wall of albums like this. And as more albums have been added, the stuff on the bottom just continues to get shifted down. And I purposely put things down here that I knew could be organized different ways. Like this used to be all of the kids' craft stuff. And as they've gotten older, they don't do that. So then I was able to get rid of that. And I knew that that would happen in the very beginning when I set this up. And, I always wanted to have a space for all my albums. Now there are a few spots missing because when I do my overview of sharing with you the difference between doing Project Life by the week and doing it by the month, I've pulled some albums to show you. The other thing that I do is I pull albums and I put them in our living room. So I will rotate through the albums. I have a space that I just set it open in our living room, and that way they get looked through. So on here, let me just go through so you have a little bit of an idea of how I do this. The gray albums are past albums. So those are albums that have layouts that are literally just from the past. Like there's really no rhyme or reason. The first gray one is like before, like when I very first started scrapbooking, before I did it yearly and before I had more of like a system. And then the second gray one is just, if I do a layout with old photos, I'm not going to filter them into any of these albums. That's too difficult. So I just have an album that is like past layouts. And then all of the mint albums and aqua albums are our family albums. And then Kayla's albums are pink. Violet's albums are green. Andrew's albums are black. And I will be doing more with their albums this year, starting this year. I was up to date, like I kept up with all of my kids' albums and our family album until COVID hit. When COVID hit, my kids' albums kind of fell apart. But my family albums have always been up to date. And then these 10x10 albums are my Pieces of Life album, and that is a separate project. So on here, I have our family albums, and I end up with 2 albums per year. I've never been able to get like 1 album per year. So you will see the spines. So I did the spines, and I have video in my membership group of how I did that. And I've recently, in the last couple years, redid them and made them a little bit bolder. And then you see like I have week in the life and day in the life right there. So this is my wall of albums. And then what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take you into my camera facing down, and I'm going to show you the difference between Project Life weekly versus Project Life monthly.
All right, so let me first say that this is going to be a long video. It's going to be very chatty, and I'm going to be sharing lots of different things in my albums and a lot of tips and things that I've learned throughout the years of doing this. I've been doing Project Lifestyle albums since 2011, and then I've been scrapbooking since before then. I've always done a yearly album, and then like I said, I had layouts from when I first started, but I've been doing this a long time, and so I have figured out some things that work for me, and I'm going to share those tips with you. And if you have questions, leave them in the comments below. I will answer them. I will also put together a blog post with some photos as well. And then if you're interested in how to get started with Project Life, I know I had a comment last week asking that, and I shared a few tips, but if you are interested in a more in-depth video of like how to get started and some like foundational tips for doing a yearly album, please let me know in the comments because I'll be happy to do that. I've already filmed all of my January my January setup for this year, and that video I believe will be next week. It's a lot to edit. It's a lot of footage. So, if you're interested in like a more of a foundation, like how do I even get started because it feels so overwhelming in the beginning, let me know and I'll do that. So a couple years ago, I switched all of my albums to D-ring albums. I had several albums that were post bound from, again, my time when I first started scrapbooking. And a few years ago, I switched to the D-ring albums, and that's what I have. So you will see this mint color, the aqua color, and then albums that look like this. I'm going to be sharing this one here in just a minute. And those are all my family or personal albums. I call them my family albums because they are about my family. They are about our family life. Before I was married, I did a personal album because it was just about me. I wasn't looking for anybody else's thoughts or voice, or it was like just me, right? It was my personal album and what I was doing. So this one is from 2008, and I just wanted to give you an idea of how I began my scrapbooking journey. And this was the layouts that I did in the very beginning when I first started out scrapbooking. They were these very traditional layouts. I used a Cricut. I used lots of embellishments. I did, you know, very fun layouts that were fairly elaborate. These are fairly elaborate layouts that would take, you know, quite a bit of time. But this is what I did. It's how I was introduced to scrapbooking. And so it just made sense for what I did. This one is the year that we had our middle daughter, who is autistic. Oh no, you know what? This is when we had Kayla. So this was like our first baby. And so I had a little bit more time on my hands for sure. With just having one baby, I stayed at home. So I had the time and the energy and the space to do these kinds of layouts. And I didn't have that many supplies back then. I had just gotten a Cricut, so I was using a lot of my Cricut. And it was just this fun thing of these traditional layouts. I loved doing it this way, and I still love doing traditional layouts. But what happened was I had 3 kids, and I started doing this online more as a way to earn income. And our middle daughter is autistic. So after we had our son in 2011, I was up late one night, and he was like 3 months old. I was trying to get some layouts done for his album, and I came across Becky Higgins' video about Project Life. Now, I will link that video in the description below. That video it's like the very first video she did about this system, and it still makes me cry to this day seeing that video. And she talked about Project Life, the style Project Life pocketed pages. This was not a thing back then, okay? There was nobody else was selling pocketed pages. There were not core kits. There were not pocket kits anywhere. In fact, when I got my very first Project Life core kit, I waited for it to come on Amazon, and there were 3 core kits that were released, and I picked one. And I picked Clementine. It was my favorite. It's actually this design here. And Becky Higgins designed a core kit, a set of designer paper, and an album, and dividers, and it was all supposed to go together, and you did this like you used it all year long. And it was so appealing to me to be able to do this in a pocketed method where I wasn't spending so much time on these layouts. It just was the thing that felt like then I could keep this up because I wanted to keep up an album. And the first tip I have for you is to really think about how you're going to be able to sustain the project. And I'm going to share some more tips that I learned as I started doing this. So this was like my second year or so doing Project Life, my second or third year. It was quite a switch. I was in a mindset of like taking a lot of photos. Like when I was doing the first kind of scrapbooking, it was more about taking a lot of photos around events. Project Lifestyle scrapbooking is more about taking everyday photos, and you don't need 100 photos to tell the story. And so this is how I've always done it. I've done a design A. That's what works for me, because one of my tips is to just figure out which way you want to take photos and always take them that way. I liked the design A, the 4 pockets up here, and then the 4 3x4 pockets. I liked that style, so I always take my photos in this horizontal way. I don't take photos that are vertical very often, because I know if I take them all horizontal, they're all gonna fit in the page protector, and then I'm just done. I don't have to worry about it. It's one less thing to think of. So this is when I was doing it weekly, and what I was doing was every single week I was doing a title card. I was picking different cards. I was still making it I was still approaching it in a more elaborate way. So here's week 3. I did my title card. I did some stamping. I did my cards. Here was an insert that I did. And a calendar. You can see I've always used this calendar method where I put in a calendar and I have memorabilia. And then I do use different size page protectors. It's one of the things I really love about Project Life is the ability to use all these different page protectors, and they layer on each other. Like, I love the way this looks, and it feels more interactive. So this was when I was doing it weekly, and then you can see week 4, week 5, I didn't have a lot. I did week 4 on the back of this, and then I did week 5. So the idea of doing it weekly is really that you take a photo a day. If you do a design A page protector, then what you're doing is you have a title card, and then I'm so sorry about the glare. My lights are a little bright this morning. And then you do like a photo a day. So like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then, you start over. Now, sometimes, maybe this photo and this photo were both on Wednesday, and I put them in the Wednesday, Thursday slot, right? Because nobody cares. Like 1,000 years later, when we're looking through this, nobody is caring that, these photos were taken on the same day. But that's sort of the concept of Week in the Life, or Project Life by the week, is you're taking those photos on a more consistent basis, on a more daily basis, and they're more everyday photos. So what was happening with this style, I love this style. It does feel a little bit more messy because your photos are not maybe as consistent with a theme. Like here's a sunset photo, and this is our friend that was going through cancer at the time, and she was sending updates, and I was, documenting that, and the kids cooking, and, the girls' bedroom. Like, this is totally not even how their bedroom looks now at all. And making cookies, and so it's not as a consistent look. It feels a little bit more messy. What I was finding is it was still very hard to keep up with this project by doing this like a title card every week and picking different stuff every single week. There were 2 things I did not like about doing it in this way. The first thing was the amount of work it still was. Like, to pick something new every single week, do a title card. I had to make so many decisions doing that every week. And then I didn't have consistency. Like, I did not have a consistent feel to my album. It just felt very messy. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just was feeling like it wasn't, it was something that I wasn't liking. So this was in, let me see, 2013, I think is what I said. So this is 2013. So I made a couple adjustments to the way I approached my weekly Project Life. And this is in 2017. You saw the title page last week. This is one of the title pages that I shared. So what I started doing is, instead of doing something different every single week, instead of changing up my style or doing a new title card, I started just doing these, I loved these circle calendars. I did them for several years in a row, and then I made this week number circle. And so for this year 2017, all of my title cards are the same. They have the calendar card with the week circled and then the week number, and then it is in this spot in my album in some form. That took out a lot of guesswork and a lot of work with the title card and made it much simpler. The next thing I did is for each month, I picked a core kit or a set of pattern paper that I liked, and that's what I used for the entire month. And then I would change it up. So for this month, I can tell that this is the everyday core kit. So we have this red and black that we start out with, and then in the next week it's this brown and black, but it's still that same core kit. And the symbols and the text and the way the cards are, they are all the same. And so that is my whole January, is that core kit. And then in February, so this is still by the week, and you can see like on this one, I just stamped the date. I didn't do a circle, but that's okay. It was an easy card to do. I wasn't doing anything really elaborate. So then in February, I change it up and I'm using some pattern paper. This was pattern paper from Stampin' Up. And then that is what I used for all of my layouts. So all of February now feels like all of February, right? But I'm still doing this by the week, and I'm still doing that same method. Title card, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday. And then if there's anything extra that I want to do, I put it in between that week. So if there's something extra happening, I think there was one back here. Yeah, this was the election. So I always do something about the election regardless of who is elected or what is happening. It's just a piece of the story that I like to tell. I like to think about doing things like this that are worldview too, like the things that are going on in our world and not just going on in our homes. I often think about my grandma and you know, what she thought. I would ask her at times, like, you know, what'd you think of this when this happened? Or what'd you think of that when that happened? And she would tell me, and I often think, like, I wish I had photos of things that they did or that things that happened and that her thoughts were with them. So I always try to include that, but you can see that this is just really fun. It's a design A that I cut down, I cut in half, and then it just inserted into this week because it was like an extra special thing that happened that week. So then you can see, like, here's February and all of our everyday stuff, and then here's March, and I do a new design. So this was a card kit, and then it goes all the way through. And you can see I have a lot of journaling through here. I do the 3x4 cards, and like every other spot is a journaling card. And that is the method that I did that really worked for a very long time. I really loved this method. I really never saw myself doing anything but Project Life weekly. Until a few years ago, I think it was a couple years before COVID, I was just feeling a little burnt out on doing this by the week and feeling like I wanted to go back to some traditional pages and like doing that more in a traditional way and just having some more creativity around my albums. And so I switched to monthly. And so the way that this works monthly, you saw this title page in last week's video. The way this works monthly for me, you can do it lots of different ways, but let's flip to February and then I'll flip back to January. So what I do is I still use a design A. So there's a design A at the beginning of February, there's a design A at the end of February, and then there's all this stuff in between. So I pick a core kit or a pattern paper for the month. You can see for February, I did the Clementine, which is my favorite core kit of all times. I have my title card that just says like February, and then I have some filler cards, and then all the photos on these pages are just random photos. They're just like if you're doing Project Life by the week and you just have some random photos, and they're just everyday photos, watching a movie, the kids' room, me in my office, driving somewhere, a sunset. Like there's no rhyme or reason to these. They're just the everyday photos, okay? And then everything in between is a few stories that I want to focus on for the month. So if we turn back to January, this one is really special. I always do my calendar, and then I have some, memorabilia, or I do a traditional layout on the back. The last couple years, I've just done some funny memes about the year. The first month of the year, we've had since COVID, we've just had some funny memes floating around, and I have added them. And then you can see this is about January 6th, and I included some photos from online and then watching it on TV. I didn't do any journaling to this. Quite honestly, it obviously is a very raw topic, and I didn't do any journaling. But there are times that I do journaling for these. I did a 6x8, and this is of wood cutting and my husband and how he cuts wood. We live in a house that only has a wood stove for heat, so we don't have central heat. And so in order to heat our house every year, we have to cut wood, and my husband does that. And I just wanted to tell this story, and I took some photos, and so I did this 6x8 and us having a fire. Kayla's birthday layout was here, and then this was some more random photos. So a storm that we got, and I just needed an extra place for some extra photos, right? So that's how monthly works. So let me show you last year's album and January, because this is really where I feel like I can explain the best on the benefit of doing this monthly. So you saw this title page last week. And then what I do is I just pick a few stories that I feel like I want to focus on for the month. So in January and February, where we live up in the foothills, out in the country. There's a lot of vineyards around. We kind of live in wine country. And we have these beautiful sunsets in January and February. And so one of the stories I knew that I wanted to tell was the sunsets. And these are photos that are not filtered at all. They are all from my front porch. And I would just snap the photos, and then I highlighted those stories. I love doing really large photos in my album. I get them printed through the Project Life app, and then I trim them down either to 9x12, or I leave them at 12x12. And one of the other stories that I wanted to focus on for the month, as I was thinking about it, sometimes I pick the stories I want to focus on at the beginning of the month, and sometimes I pick them at the end of the month, looking back, oh, what happened this month? For January, I had thought I really wanted to document my husband's work. He was a tow truck driver at the time, and it had been a couple years since I had kind of highlighted his work. So at the beginning of January, I kind of picked a week. I think it was the second week of January that year, and I asked him to take some photos. So all of these photos here, with the exception of this one, are photos that he took. His lunch box and his clipboard and his gear, an accident he was at, some scenery as he drove up a certain road and looked out, and he would just text me the photos, and I would save them on my camera roll, and then I could do whatever I wanted with them, as far as getting, printed larger. Here he was on a call, and he took a photo standing on his truck. The really amazing thing is, it's not so amazing that he lost his job at the end of January. The company he was working for sold their company because of COVID. They just couldn't make it through, everything that went on with COVID. And so they sold that part of the company, and he lost his job. And as I went back, and I was printing these photos, we already knew he was losing his job. And I became so forever thankful that I documented this story on this month, because he doesn't do that anymore. He's in a totally different field. And we look back at the days he was towing at that season in our life, and it's very, we're very thankful for it. And it was just a different season in our life. And so these photos and this story of highlighting this story became so important to me. And I was so thankful for it. So that's not how it always works out. I'm not always able to like foresee into the future kind of and capture like such a moment. But it is something that like I was thankful. If I was doing this by the week, Project Life by the week, I might only have this photo. Like that might have been the photo that like he might have texted that to me, and I might have been like, oh, that will represent our Thursday. Like, okay, that's great. That's beautiful. It's a beautiful photo. There's nothing wrong with that. But being able to highlight this story is so nice, particularly the phase of life that I'm in. And also my goal was, when I started by the month, was to get one album per year. That has not happened for me. So I thought that I would be able to just have one album per year and that it would be fine. I'm still in 2 albums per year. And the thing is that I don't care. If you care about like, if you're feeling like I don't have the storage, or I don't know where to put them, or that's a lot of albums, then definitely work through how you can get one album or different sizes. There's 9x12 albums, 6x8. I mean, you can do Project Life however you want. Like this is not like either or. You don't have to pick by the week or by the month. You don't have to do 12x12. I do 12x12 because it's what I started in and I'm fine with it. And I've always said, if all I had in my house was albums lining the walls, sitting on the floor, you know, on every wall of my house, I would be fine with that, because this is my heart. And so I love it so much. And so finding a place for them is not an issue. If it is an issue for you, then just think about the different sizes you can do. I know some people do 12x12 and they do like 1 week per page. You can use the app, the Project Life app, and then everything's more condensed, and you can do it in photo books instead of, you know, ringed albums. Like I said, you can do 9x12. You could do one, you know, the Design A, like the Design A and the Design A, this could be 1 month. Like you could just do February and do 1 month this way instead of having anything extra in here. So there's so many options. For me, as I started to go back to, as I started to do monthly, not go back to, I had never done monthly before, but as I entered into doing monthly, what that allowed me to do and what that opened up for me was to be able to do more traditional layouts, to be able to do things like this where I wasn't able to do that during the week, because again, things are a little bit more messy when you're doing it by the week. They're a little bit more random. They're a little bit more you know, not necessarily pulled together. And so for me, I really wanted to get back to a place where I could do more traditional layouts. And if you're interested in seeing some of these process videos for these, my membership group, which is $14.99 a month, I share all of this in there. So I do 2 projects a week aside from what I share publicly in that group. And then also it's really a place where you can get like one-on-one help, and I do lives in that group. It is on Facebook, but I also have a website where all of the information is kept. So if you don't want to be on Facebook, that's totally fine. I have a website where all of the content is put, and you can watch all the videos on that website. You log in and you can see that. I'll leave the link below. It is my Life Simply Documented subscription group. It's $14.99 $14.99 a month, $14.99 a month. And like I said, I share 2 extra projects a week in that group. I put in all of my digitals, so like my calendars that I use every year, like this, my calendars, I add to that group. Any die cuts that I do, I add to that group. We do a fun event every year called Stories of Home, and we document stories of our home. I think Stories of Home is in this album, so you can see that this was an extra thing I focused on in the month of April, and it has this really cool flip out and these pockets, and I did all of this in the in that membership group. I have this really large photo. It's hard to get all of this in. A really large photo of the front of our house, and I did these die cuts for everybody in the group who wanted one with their last name and a house, and then they were able to cut theirs out. So it's just a really fun group. It's like YouTube, membership or Patreon. I just host it all on my own website, and then we just utilize Facebook to interact if you want to interact as a group. I will also say a tip. I know a lot of people don't love Facebook. I don't love Facebook. I only use Facebook for my groups that I'm in for like work and like my membership group. If you want to sign up with a fake name on Facebook, all you have to do is contact me and let me know what name you've signed up with, and then I'll let you into the group knowing that you are, who you are, but you're on Facebook with a fake name, and that's totally fine. I totally get it. I don't love Facebook either. So that is the basic between doing Project Life by the week versus doing it by the month. Now, those are not the only ways to do it. Like I said, this is not 12 by 12 is not the only size. Weekly versus monthly is not the only method. The way that I approach doing it monthly is not the only approach. It's just what has worked for me. I have found that if I find a system that will work for me, that is really how I manage to stay caught up with it, is when I find a system that works and I can just go back to that and do it over and over again. And like I said, I've kept up with my family album since 2008. So personal or family album, I have one since 2008. I've never really fallen behind. I'm a bit behind this year with 2022. I'm finishing up a lot of stuff right now, but I'm not really behind. It's only the first couple months of the new year. So, and I currently am all caught up. Like January's all done for this year, which you'll see next week for Project Life Thursday. So I hope that this was helpful. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'll put together a blog post with some photos and the tips that I have for you. And I hope that you are enjoying Project Life Thursdays. Next week, hopefully I will be sharing January and the way January is looking for me in 2023. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will chat with you later.